Good evening and welcome to Nightfall in Amsterdam. Tonight we are joining a variety of individuals as the Prince of Amsterdam, although he prefers not to use that title, is called the Kindred to Court. In his typical fashion, he has organized court in an outdoor uh, sort of amphitheater within the forest. Logs have been dragged up. And while it is not lit yet, some of the younger kindred shuffle a bit nervously in the front rows as the large pile of tinder seems set for a bonfire. Prince had whispered word through many different channels to ensure that even those who were new to the city or did not often socialize were made aware. As we join the kindred, many are still shuffling in. It doesn't appear that any sort of official proceedings have begun. But the prince is present, seated fairly casually on a large stump, a large sword by his side, and another number of other well-established kindred, many of whom are his allies and companions, such as his seneschal Victor, have gathered up as well, speaking to him on a one-on-one basis. As the kindred approach, some new, some well established in the city, he gestures regularly to the logs, inviting them to gather and socialize, find a seat. With that, we will turn it over to each of you to introduce yourselves into the area as you see fit, whether you come together or individually, and whether you seek out clan mates is up to you.
Well, Rachel will be standing off to the side, basically, just standing aloof from the rest of the crowds, since she doesn't know anyone. She's probably drawing some attention since she looks exactly like a human in most ways, including her aura, but
Mija, come on. I was here with you last time. I don't know why you don't let me just run around. There's so many lovely trees here. I just want to make them all grow so big and strong. Please, Mija.
Well, darling, I'm not sure the prince would appreciate that. Though he might. Perhaps you should get his permission, as this is his space.
Oh, I will ask him then tonight. If you are
Mm,
okay with me asking. What
of
if he wants to
course.
see, something special from me for me to do it? And she kind of gestures up to her neck, trailing a finger down it.
Suppose we'll have to see what he asks for.
Mm. See me, huh? Mm.
Of course.
It's so wonderful when you get to mm, do that, and I just miss it. It's been days now. I almost feel longing for it.
Mm. Avalon is just eyeing up Miranda's neck.
Miranda has her hair up, so her neck is fully exposed, and there's definitely a fresh, humany, fleshy scent to her. And she's
Just
gonna
a
step closer
little
to me.
longer, darling.
Mm. And she's gonna run her hand down your cheek. If I must wait, Mija, I will wait, but you make me wait so much.
Avalon will just smile at her and
Who's this new girl over here, Mija? Have you seen her before?
I have not.
She looks almost as alive as me. She must be one of you to be by herself, but. Mm.
I'm sure we will meet her.
Go say hello, Mija. You can do it. And she kind of nudges Avalon towards the woman.
Avalon just kind of looks at the woman that Miranda is nudging her toward. She just kind of lifts a hand up and smiles and waves.
That woman would be Rachel. Rachel has a woman kind of being pushed towards her, and she's waving at her.
Sorry, I was coughing. Rachel looks up at the pair when the woman raises a hand to get her attention and smiles and then walks over fairly confidently to greet them. Naturally, she has a very strong American accent as soon as she speaks in English. Hang on, let me think about what she's going to say. Hi, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm new to the city, but I'm just trying to introduce myself to the court as is only proper. May I ask who you are?
See, you may very much
And
ask
when
who
she
we are.
introduces her, very heavy. You notice a very heavy Irish accent. And this is my darling friend Miranda. And she motions her hand towards the one with the very Spanish accent.
Buenos noches, señorita. You are new here, then very well welcome to you.
Has anything in particular brought you to this fine city?
Mostly business. I spent a lot of time down in Italy, and I thought I might as well go around to see the rest of Europe.
No. Traveling can be fun.
It's a little terrifying. I hear there's a lot of wolves around here.
Wolves? I do not think there are wolves around here. I think the prince would definitely know if there were the wolves here. Mm. We did not see any last time, Mija.
I'm sure you would indeed know if there were wolves running about.
Rachel
I
chuckles.
haven't encountered any myself, but been here much longer, so I suppose he would.
Rachel chuckles and then looks at the piled wood for the fires. Does he usually do stuff like this?
The bonfires? Well, they were here the first time. I would have to guess this is customary for him, and why not? They're lovely.
Think of it kind of like a rite of passage.
Rachel glances at the piled wood, then glances back at the women, then glances back at the piled wood, and then glances back at the women.
Oh, you do
Follow
not like fire.
Follow-up question: is he going to light those up?
Oh, see. Last time we were moved because of some circumstances, but I'm very certain that he will light them this time. It'll be quite beautiful. It'll be nice to stay warm out here. It's so muy frío.
Hmm. Indeed, I hope they're lit. It's been a long time since I've enjoyed a nice bonfire. She'll want to say duck.
Bartholomew walks up. Good evening, everyone. Looks around.
They're hard to hear.
I turned them up slightly.
Any better?
A little bit.
Fair bet, I can actually hear you now.
Now, while we're waiting there, Avalon is going to just, motion for the other two ladies to proceed. Is there anyone else like here besides the?
There's a couple of other kindred already, and more seem to be filing in.
Okay.
There's most noticeably a group, a woman kind of dressed in some furs, talking to a man. It's almost like a Victorian era suit with top hat. There's a one gentleman who's got actually is taking a seat fairly front and center, and actually pulled out a notebook. It looks like he's ready to take notes.
Bartholomew walks up and gives a slight nod to everybody and says, "Good evening."
Avalon will kind of glance over and give him a nod.
Rachel gives them a
Just kind
genuinely.
of watching the guy with the notebook.
I hope I'm in the right place tonight. I was told to come here.
Rachel gives him a friendly smile and then returns.
Come, you're likely in the correct place.
If you are in the wrong place, Senor, you will find out very quickly. In not a not so very good way.
Not too worried about that. Just making sure I'm in the right company.
Oh, we are the best of company.
Is there any place around to take a seat? And if so, I'll just take a seat, cross my right leg over my left knee, and place my hands on my lap.
There's a number of large logs that have kind of been dragged in to serve as benches. There's some stones along the clearing that would work as seats as well.
I'll sit down on one of the logs.
Avalon's going motion for Miranda to come sit next to her.
Miranda will give her a very playful smile as she makes her way over and sits in Avalon's lap.
Avalon just grins. much better than next to me.
I am glad you approve me. And she kind of just lays her head on your shoulder.
Rachel
Yeah.
heads over to the Victorian couple to introduce herself and listen into what they're talking about.
As you approach, the gentleman in the suit turns to you and gives you a fairly formal bow. And he says, "Good evening, ma'am. What brings you to the fine city this night?"
Obeying custom and being polite, introducing myself to the prince. Rachel hesitates and then does a poorly executed curtsy, as she is an American who do not curtsy, and gives him a winning smile. May I ask your names?
He turns to this woman who's kind of dressed in furs, and she says, "Well, of course, I'm Sophie. This gentleman here is Marty. Don't mind Marty. He's old-fashioned European." And then she kind of leans over to you and, in like a sage whisper, "He can be a little bit of a stick in the mud, but quite the gentleman."
Rachel chuckles and nods at her, and then looks at them and asks about
I think you cut off. I heard asks about, and that's where I lost you.
Oh, my bad. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. She looks over at them, and then she looks at the prince and asks, "When do you think? How long does it usually take for the prince to get started?" How do these gatherings usually go?
She kind of chuckles and she says, "Well, knowing him, he's waiting for, oh, who knows, sometimes it's a meteor shower if he knows one's coming, or a particular constellation to be in the right position. He's very old-fashioned on his timekeeping. Tonight, however, I'd say he's just waiting until everyone is in. He's got a lot of newer faces, as well as a lot of those who are established but don't often come out. Rumor has it as well, he's been getting some reports from the Nosferatu, and so it's a business meeting as well. Give us an update on the city, so I imagine he wants as many people here for the news as possible." I doubt it will be much longer, however.
Rachel smiles. Any advice with the prince?
She kind of chuckles and she says, "As I said, he's old-fashioned. He's well, we don't know how old he is, but we know he's old enough that he can honestly claim the title Jarl. He doesn't just carry a sword for show. Then she kind of shrugs and says, he's a gangrel with a brain. Keep that in mind. Too many think that, oh, the prince is a gangrel, he'll be a dumb beast, and then they find out that over his many, many lifetimes, he has seen and learned many secrets. And when your prince keeps a member of the old clan from Romania as his seneschal and keeps an Antitribu as his scourge, well, maybe there's a reason he's still prince. Although I will give him credit, he values integrity and honesty. Then she turns and says, have you had a chance to mingle with any of your own clanmates, if you have any in the city?
Rachel shakes her head. No, I'm afraid that I'm a very recent arrival. I have yet to meet many other kindred.
Well, opportunity to meet and mingle tonight then. Generally, by the time the gathering begins, most tend to sit with their clan if they have working relationship with them. Then she gestures over to one side and you see a couple of individuals gathering, and she says, you can see, of course, the Ventru, typical to them, right up front. Although, with the sheriff being a member of the clan, it does make sense. She gestures to the opposite side. She says, our pair of Toreador are present tonight. Both Anya and Wim. It's unusual for Wim to be out unless it's perhaps the news is relevant to him. He spends much time in his museums. She gestures to Marty and she says, yeah, as soon as Marius joins us, we will have Clan Tremere here in full strength.
Rachel chuckles and strikes a theatrical pose. I suppose I should join my fellow Toreador then. Thank you for your time.
She nods and says, pleasure, of course. Should you decide to visit later, you're welcome to stop by my shop. It's the Fabula Rosa. It's a cult shop here in town.
Rachel nods thoughtfully. I hope to see you again soon. Thank you. She then wanders off to join the other Toreador.
He kind of gives a small wave, and you notice a man in a long trench coat comes up to join Marty and Sophie. Avalon and Miranda, you would recognize, of course, Marius. Is the Tremere who keeps the graveyard. He gives you a bit of a wave as he comes through.
Miranda will wiggle her fingers at him in a hello.
Anyway, she's a response. He kind of gives one more polite nod as he heads in the rest of the way, sits with his clanmates. And then he, just before it starts, he kind of leans over to Miranda and Avalon, and he says, "Just so you know, if it's a bit loud when we get back, Angel is doing some evictions."
Muchas gracias, señor.
As the prince is about to stand and gather, he kind of gestures to Marius, who comes up and speaks with him briefly before returning to his seat. The prince then stands, and he takes his sword and he kind of right against a stone that's set flat in the ground, and all of you are able to see this has obviously been done before. There's gouges in the stone from the tip of his sword as he kind of taps it real loud on the stone, point down, and it echoes. He turns and he says, "Welcome. I see among us many long-time faces and some new ones. Welcome. Welcome to Amsterdam. Welcome to the court." And he kind of looks around and he says, "This is a place where we prepare for war when it is necessary, but it is a place for peace." He turns and he says, "I care not for affiliations, care not for your clan's rivalries, your personal vendettas. In this place, we have one purpose, and that is for us to survive. There will be politics here," and he kind of chuckles a little bit and he says, "because we would not be what we are if there was no politics. In fact, I would be suspicious of all of you if there were no politics when you showed up here. But at the end of this night, we leave here knowing that while we may be monsters in the night, there are others out there too. And if we monsters turn upon ourselves, the others come for us." And as he turns to speak again, he suddenly stops. As a younger woman comes in. Almost quietly. Like she's trying to be discreet and she knows she's late. And he stops and he looks at her. And he says, and of course, it would not be court if we did not have those who show up fashionably late. And he chuckles again and he says, welcome, Thea. Come, join the rest of our clan up front. He gestures up front where you notice there's a older gentleman with actually kind of a whitish gray beard. And still fairly well trimmed. As well as a fairly lean Korean gentleman. And he says, well, for those of you new to the city, I'm pleased to announce that my clan, the Gangrel, have all of our announced members in attendance. Thea, thank you for joining us. That rounds out the group. Nice even number. 3 of you, plus myself. He turns and says, there are a number of matters to discuss this evening. Gestures out towards the crowd. There are new faces here. As is my standing policy, we make sure word gets out to all kindred of when our next court gathering will be. They're given a grace period of 1 court gathering before they have to announce themselves. I see there are those who have gotten the message and have come here to take advantage of that grace period and introduce themselves around. That's fantastic. It's much more pleasant than those who wish to try and pillage and rape the city. There's activity in this city as well. Events that finally have a bit of bearing on us. And not just where can we make a bit more profit or where can we feed a bit more, a bit less. Events with true meaning and bearing. We'll discuss those. We'll give opportunity for any who have questions or grievances to air them. Then we will have any needed decisions. I will get input, as is my custom. He kind of looks around. He says, while we recognize the primogen, we also recognize the value of all individuals. Everyone will have a chance to give input on it, some matters, before final decisions are made. Then, in a opportunity that is unusual, we'll share in a bit more of a feast this evening. We have some unique fineries to share this evening. Gifts. And of course, what better way to welcome the new kindred? He turns and he says, for those of you less familiar with the city, newcomers, recluses, I'll introduce my staff. I have Victor. He turns to a fairly tall man with longer hair. And he says, my old friend Victor. Victor is the right hand of this city. He helps manage it. I have a tendency to perhaps focus on the big picture. Victor handles the details. When I paint the forest, he adds the trees. He gestures over to the Ventrue, to a rather stout little man, not even 6 feet, and fairly plump. He says, we have our Sheriff Flores. Sheriff handles the other matters that keep the city running. Remember, when you do business in his city. For those of you who are perhaps a little off guard to see a Ventrue Sheriff, remember, any kindred can come after you with a sword. And he kind of chuckles. He says, but it's a truly dangerous one who strips all your assets and leaves you spinning in the sunlight. And then he turns to a shorter, lean man, fairly dressed in almost in rags. In fact, if he hadn't been pointed out to you and he wasn't being introduced, you would have thought perhaps a homeless man wandered in. He said, and then of course we have our scourge, Jules. Let's not forget that Jules made it through the most grueling atrocities mortals and supernaturals alike could inflict on one another, and came out the other side. Jules is here to make sure that those who abuse the grace period or do not follow through on procedure and policy do not become a threat to our city. Then he kind of leans back and he says, and where are my manners? I'm Prince Gunnar Thorson. I've been prince of this city for enough years that they blend together. Enough that I remember the seasons beginning to shift in relation to the calendar. He kind of chuckles. She says, do you know on All Hallows Eve, it used to be significantly colder. Now I see some new faces in our crowd. Perhaps they'd care to introduce themselves. Perhaps they're just here for dinner. Perhaps they're here to become dinner. But if I talk all night, we'll never know. He gestures to the back and he says, first, the gentleman who introduced himself to me prior to the meeting, Arthur, why don't you go ahead and announce yourself? There's a gentleman in the back, dressed in a dark suit. You'll see he's got a sidearm under it. He says, "Good evening. The name is Arthur Duncern. I'm relatively new to the city, although I did in fact take advantage of the grace period. I'm here on behalf of Clan Giovanni. We have business in the city, advantages, trade, perhaps some sort of permanent establishment even. It's hard to say. But we got no conflict. We respect the promises given. We respect the agreements entered into. And we appreciate the hospitality of the prince. Anyone looking to do business, I got cards available after. And he kind of gives a little formal, not even a true bow, but nods his head and takes a seat. Prince kind of looks to the rest of the crowd to see if anyone else would like to introduce themselves.
I'll stand up, straighten my suit, look out across the crowd, tip my head to the left and bow slightly, straighten back up, clear my throat. Bartholomew Dupree, recently arrived from Cairo. I have some business in the city. I am a trader of antiquities. I would like one of your business cards, sir, after this. And if I may, Clan Asimite. And with that, I'll sit down.
Rachel stands up after a moment to introduce herself as well. She looks around and then smiles at everyone and says, "I'm Rachel. I'm recently arrived from Rome, and I am clearly of Clan Toreador."
So after Rachel gives her introduction, a woman in very worn traveling clothes just kind of is walking through the park, sees this big gathering of people, and just kind of slips into the back of the crowd. And she is watching the woman who came in late with this look on her face of surprise.
The woman in question doesn't quite seem to take much notice. Not that she necessarily recognizes you or anything. The prince kind of takes you in and nods and just gestures towards the the empty seats.
She just kind of looks at the prince, looks at everybody else, and just kind of slides into a seat. She's sitting over unwittingly by Clan Ventruel. That's who she ends up sitting next to.
The Venture kind of just give you your room. Not in any mean way. They don't know you, so they're not rude about it, but they also don't go out of their way to make you feel unwelcome either. You would notice another individual kind of hovering up front as well. Should kind of standing off into the trees slightly. The prince kind of nods to the other ones who've introduced themselves. He says, "Well, welcome to the city. We certainly appreciate the the company." He kind of looks over at this woman, but doesn't directly put her on the spot. And he turns and says, "Very well then. We'll move on to relevant business and news. First and foremost, relevant news," and he gestures to a Russian woman, younger Russian woman, and he says, "Anya has been kind enough to open her nightclub, Paradiso, to any of those new in the city who have not yet had a chance to locate and establish their own feeding grounds. They'll be given an opportunity to feed a couple nights a week should they see the need." And then he turns and he says, "As a generous offer, and indeed puts the best interests of the city first, I am personally offering a minor boon to Miss Stadlander of Clan Toreador for her generosity." It's his second order of business for the night. We have gotten word that among the Magi and Will workers there is a former retainer of Clan Tremere. Although not associated with the local branch, he relocated here after he somehow broke free of those bonds. Our concern is we do not know what his stance towards us is, and his experience makes his magic potentially that much more deadly. The third order of business. Amsterdam is a fairly relaxed country or city. That being said, we must make sure we are remaining discreet and take steps to ensure that our discretion is maintained. Seems we've had some, whether it be snitches or what the case may be, who have traded some of the Nosferatu's less savory business fronts. That's something we must be aware of. Next order of business, I have heard tell of a individual, origins unknown, abilities unknown, who's been asking around, not quite outright, but outright enough that they obviously are aware of things. They seem to be looking for kindred, but specifically kindred of my clan. Well, we have other lesser matters. Those are our most pressing ones at this point. We'll advance then to anyone who has questions, comments, or concerns and wishes to express them.
I'll raise my hand.
And he gives you a nod to go ahead.
So the Tremere pet that broke away and has somehow made his way into this city. Do we have a name?
He looks and he says, unfortunately, we do not. We're not quite sure if it was simply his level of understanding of his own magics reached a point where he was able to break his bonds with it, but he was able to kill those close to him before leaving.
Do we know where he came from?
He chuckles a little bit and he says, that part we do know. From what we can garner, this was a Tremere retainer in somewhere in the Spanish regions.
European Spanish or Central American Spanish?
European. They once had a established chantry in Spain, an old Inquisition hideout, it's rumored. But apparently, when breaking free, he also managed to use his powers to ensure that he would not be followed in the near future. And alas, without survivors, we have minimal names.
I'll cross my hands and put them in my lap. Nod. Thank you very much.
The gentleman who is writing stands up and says, we've addressed possibility of threats to us. Have any steps been taken to look into these? Have we sent anyone out? And the prince kind of looks at him and says, well, we have limited resources, so sending them out as if they were disposable is not an option.
Rachel raises a hand.
He nods again.
Are you looking for volunteers to help you plug the gaps in the masquerade?
He looks at you and says, that would not be the worst solution. We haven't had any major breaches, but maintaining things as they are is going to be a process.
Rachel gives him a slight smile and nods. I would like to volunteer if you need any. And then she sits back down.
And he gives you a nod as well. And then he says, before I get too much further, I realize there's some new faces that perhaps not everyone is entirely aware of. And he kind of gestures around and he says, we have with us Avalon and her retainer, who had previously introduced themselves. And then he turns wider. He says, we also have a number of retainers present tonight. It's one of the things that we will discuss during voting. He looks to everybody. He says, well, if we have no other questions, we will advance to policy making. He turns and he says, very well, then the first order of business that we must discuss and to some degree vote upon. Our city is currently relatively minimally structured. Oh, sure, there are those like Anya, those like Sin, who control their own feeding areas, their own territories. But for the most part, it is a free-for-all, or territory is controlled by clan. So we are looking for feedback. How is territory going to be designated? Do we wish to designate at all? Do we want individuals holding their own territory? And if so, who is the arbiter of that? Then he kind of turns and he says, as we're discussing the state of the city, another matter upon which I need input. What do we do with this city? We've had a quantity. So the question becomes, in a city this big, which continues to grow, is it time for more kindred? Shall we offer the privilege of creation, the right of the embrace? And if so, shall it be indefinite? Shall it be till a quantity of kindred? Shall it be a limit per clan?
So, what are the numbers now? If you want to talk about quantity for clan.
He looks and he says, well, there may be fledglings here and there, those who were lost perhaps and never found their way back to us, but for those who are known and established in the city, my own clan, Clan Gangrel, is the largest with 4 members. And then he kind of looks around the clearing and he says, and what you see here, and it's probably less than 30 people. He says, this is what we have for kindred at this time total.
Then maybe we could add a few more. It wouldn't help. Amsterdam's a sizable city. Not overly large, but a huge tourist population. So feeding should not be an issue. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, kind of looks around. He gets some people kind of scowling a little bit. He says, well, that seems like a reasonable plan. Shall we set a limit by clan? Shall we put an overall limit?
The woman sitting by the venture just has a very confused expression on her face.
The Venture have kind of looked at her a little bit funny a couple times now, but that's about it.
Actually, as she's sitting there, and listening, she's just going to run a thumb over her pendant and just whisper under her breath, "Opsisue," which is she's gonna try and pop up some life sight on this bitch, see what the fuck's going on, because she's really confused.
All right.
And I need to find the rules room.
Should be in our group description.
Yes, I don't have the group favorited, like our pinned yet, so it takes me a second.
It's in the side chat.
Awesome, thank you. Three successes. I'm just gonna put all 3 in duration.
Okay.
So is anybody here alive?
The man who is standing on the edge, you would notice. And he's kind of dressed. Well, pull up a picture of him.
How does life sight work? Do you see auras?
No, you see like
Actual life energies.
yeah.
So that.
Oh, I know him. So yeah, him and Miranda are the only ones alive.
Rachel would probably show up as slightly more life energy because she's
Okay.
due to her unique state. But yeah, the rest are showing up as some sort of undead.
She's just gonna kind of lean back, put her arms behind, like her hands behind her head, and just watch.
The prince says, very well, then on the first matter of the rate of creation, we will grant at this point each clan the right to sire one new child. It will be up to those within your clan to determine who gets to utilize that authority. He kind of looks around, not seeing much in the way of disagreement on this particular policy. He moves on from that. He says, now in terms of territory, who wishes territories divided among individuals? Looking at the crowd, he's not seeing much in the way of outspoken objections or thoughts. And he says, very well then, for the time being, we will table the idea of mandatory private territories.
So what next then?
He kind of looks around, shrugs his shoulders a little bit, and he says, well, not quite the response I expected, but so be it. We do live in a more progressive age. So then the last matter is requiring a vote is do we wish to invite kindred from outside the city?
Miranda raises her hand.
You will kind of look at her and then nod.
Senior Prince, why would you want to invite people from outside the city for having part of the city? I do not understand what it is you are trying to do.
Well, it seems to me if we have a shortage of kindred, we can all embrace new kindred and teach them. Or we can find those who have already been taught and teach them how to become part of what we are.
Both have the possible merit to the options idea, but when you bring them from the outside, you are assuming that they were taught properly and have the good information, and they are not going to be just troublemakers who are trying to get out of being in trouble. Whereas if you start them from the beginning here, you know that they are taught good and that they will not be the problems.
He kind of nods and he says, "You make some valid points. For the time being, we shall table the idea of inviting more outside kindred to join us. Focus on those we have." And then he kind of gestures and he says, "We will, however, continue to support Mr. Duncern's efforts to establish himself and his family here." He turns and he says, "Well, that should conclude the voting, unless anyone has any other matters they wish to bring up." He turns and he says, "Well, if we have completed that conversation, I have here with me," he pulls out a number of bottles, he says, "some of the finest options in this city. And as he turns, he brings out, or rather his retainers bring out a fairly large chest, and when he flips the lid back, it's got like apothecary bottles within it and stuff. And he pulls out a number of these bottles and he says, "This should be a fairly good vintage opportunity." He says, "For one, the blood we have brought in is higher quality. For two, we gather here as strangers, to dine, being an opportunity for us to net a bit. And then he begins passing bottles out to each individual. He turns to take all of, make sure everybody's gotten an opportunity. He says, fellows of Amsterdam, the spring water provided today. And he kind of chuckles as he holds up a bottle clearly full of blood. He says, it was privately donated by an individual who had been having family issues. And then he leans in conspiratorially, kind of almost, and he says, and I urge all of you to sample it. The blood we have here comes from a man of pedigree. And then I'll begin passing glasses to everyone.
So if someone tries to hand a glass to this woman, she's just gonna look at it and then offer it to one of the Ventru.
One of them does take it and kind of look at you a little funny again.
She just gives the one that is looking at her funny kind of like a wink, and then goes and back to her seat and sits down.
All right. He will offer a round to everyone else. Then.
Suppose it would be rude not to take it.
Bartholomew will stand and take a glass and sit down, just slowly twirling the glass and its contents in his right hand, almost as if it was in a whiskey in a tumbler.
She kind of looks at Miranda while she's holding her glass, and she's like, I somehow have a feeling I've had better. And she winks at her.
Rachel politely takes the glass and starts sipping it delicately. She's looking over at the woman sitting next to the Ventru curiously and tries to use heightened senses to see if she can notice anything strange about her.
All right.
I mean, she very obviously has a heartbeat and she's breathing. If she got heightened senses.
I'm not sure if there's any rolls or anything I need to do.
I don't believe so for heightened senses. I was just double checking.
There's no rule to activate it. You just roll perception alertness at the lower difficulty by the dots of your auspex.
You do, however, find that, uh, and perhaps there's something in the blood you drank, but there's kind of a hazy view over everything of another, almost like the world had like a shadow image or a ghost image to it. And after you blink a couple times, it fades away.
Rachel tilts her head to the side and tries to make sense of what the that image is for the brief time that she can see it.
It seems to literally be exactly what you thought. It's if you had to guess, you would almost say it is what a reflection of the things that have died in this world. So it's the world kind of in a static state.
Rachel frowns and then sets her glass down and starts inspecting it instead of paying attention to what's going on to try to figure out what's in the blood.
This spring avalanche is gonna bring her glass to her lips and drink.
All right, for Avalon, the thing that kind of catches almost is the spirit within her, the Leonin spirit that's part of her, almost seems to rise up after tasting this, wanting more.
Okay.
Do you want me to give you any kind of roll for Rachel sniffing the glass and whatnot?
Yes, I will need a. Let's go with a harvest sheet. There are a chance to be running 3 venues, otherwise to always ask for the ability that's not on your character sheet, so. Alright, let's go with a intelligence occult.
Okay. So just intelligence and occult?
Yes.
And it's standard 6 difficulty?
Yep.
2 successes.
You would recognize it seems to be some sort of property of the blood itself. The fact that it's giving a reaction like that would lead you to believe it must be some sort of unusual supernatural blood.
Rachel hesitates for a second and then continues drinking it.
It does seem to have a slightly more intense effect if you drink a bit more of it.
Kelly is going to look around at the crowd, and she's just going to look at Miranda and kind of tilt her head to the side in like a questioning manner.
Miranda, seeing if somebody looking at her, should just give you like a very coy smile and a wink, and then lean in and like nibble on Avalon's ear.
Her eyebrow goes up, especially with life side up, seeing that Avalon's not alive. She's just kind of not judging, but there's a little bit of side eye there. There's just a little bit of side eye.
And when she feels Miranda nibble on her ear, but she's kind of trying to ponder what she just experienced here when drinking this blood.
Alright, if you want to make a intelligence occult as well, you could.
And is everybody still sitting down, or are people starting to get up and mingle now, or is it still kind of like have a bit of a formal air to it?
No, it's become more social as they drink and move about.
So in that case, she's going to actually go over to where Miranda and Avalon are, and she's just kind of gonna sit on the edge on the other end of the log, and just kind of wait for them to notice her.
Buenas noches, señorita. ¿Cómo estás?
I got 3 successes.
Alright, so 3 successes, you would know that the blood is clearly supernatural, and the fact that this dark forest spirit wants it means it probably has some sort of similar tie. Whether that's because it originates in the same place or what the case may be, you're not sure.
So Callie is going to tilt her head to the side at Miranda, and she's going to reply in very quick ancient Greek, which I don't actually know any ancient Greek, so.
I know a few languages, but that is no one that I am familiar with.
It's Greek. I'm not familiar with Spanish. I suppose we should call it even?
My apologies, señorita.
And she'll like hold her hand out for a handshake.
Miranda will take one of her hands and reach out and shake your hand. And my name is Miranda. And this is my what is the word, señorita? Your hand is warm. Your hand.
Is it not supposed to be? I'm Callie.
Who do you belong to?
And that really makes her eyebrow go up. So, sorry, I'm here to talk to her. And she points at Thea. So I guess her?
Hey, Mija.
Yes.
Mija. She's gonna whisper quietly. I don't think she is supposed to be here. She is alive. And she is, I do not think she is, like I am.
Hmm. Who did you say you were supposed to speak to again?
That lady over there. She points to Thea again. She's Gabriel, I think you called him.
Definitely
Mija.
not like us.
Oh, Mija. And that is, should I take her out here quickly? Um, I do not think it is good for her to stay here. As in,
Well, if you came to speak with her and her eyes kind of look over, let's go talk to her.
Okay. And she shrugs and stands up, starts to walk over to Thea.
Avalon's kind of staying behind Callie, but keeping an eye on her.
Would it be safe to say that Rachel overheard every word of this?
I would assume you at least heard enough to follow the gist of it.
Rachel's gonna go ahead and stand up and start heading over towards the prince.
Okay.
As Callie approaches Thea, she's just going to kind of get where she can like see her and then stand there waiting for her to acknowledge her.
And she finally kind of looks at you and says, "There something I can help you with?"
And she's, oh, that was Fenris. She'll say in really quick ancient Greek, sister, I was sent to bring you a message from the Ipotropoi. Is everything all right?
She just kind of looks at you and says, "I no longer belong among that group."
And then is she replying in ancient Greek or in English? Just so I know.
It would be still in Greek.
Okay. And she'll just say, well, we didn't know. They haven't heard from you in ages, so I was sent to see what's going on with you. What do you want me to tell them? Obviously, you're not like us anymore.
They're
She
talking
says,
in Greek. Avalon just looks confused.
"No, I am not. We've been changed after a rather traumatic event."
She'll say, well, you may not be a sister anymore. If you need help with anything, I can still help you.
She says, "No, that I am now the one who gives the help."
And she kind of tilts her head to the side and replies, in what way?
She says, "There are those who need guardianship, those who need warriors."
And she nods and she says, I still don't see what that.
She says, "Well, I am well, in order, so to speak, that that steps throughout the night and hunts those who no longer belong."
And she just kind of raises an eyebrow. So you're Lamia? And out of character, she does not mean in like the clan sense. She's like actually referring to the Greek monster. Just so there's no confusion out of character.
She says, "No, closer to the curious."
And she nods. Well, if you need any help, I'm staying here for a while, so get in touch with me and I can help you if I can.
She nods and says, "Well, it would be good to simply have others to speak with who understand. There are very few who have taken the path from your world to ours."
And she nods. Says, here's my phone number. She just like takes a little piece of paper, scribbles on there, hands it to her. Get in contact with me if you need to. And then she'll start heading out of the park.
She nods back and says, "Perhaps we will have to catch up soon."
And she will just, before she leaves, she'll just reply, I think so too. Stay safe, sister.
She nods back and says, "You as well."
And then she'll head off to go find a place to sleep for the night.
While she's walking away, Avalon's kind of looking up to the sky to see if Bran is flying around anywhere.
He has been kind of circling over the crowds.
She's gonna kind of make a call for him to come down. Go whistle. Something that he can hear easily.
And he will do so.
And she'll reach out her wrist for him, and she will shoot his head to whisper something in his little bird ear here. It's essentially keeping an eye on Callie there. See what's up with her.
All right.
She promises him chicken if he does a good job. For anyone curious about what Bran is, he's a raven.
As Callie gets out of the clearing, another individual comes up to her on her way out.
Okay.
And yeah, my picture. It is this fairly heavily tattooed individual. And he comes up, and he's got kind of a thick, a little bit thicker accent. Northern Scandinavian of some sort. And he nods back towards the and he says, "You knew her once, did you not?"
Not personally, but I know some acquaintances of hers.
He says, "I knew of the woman who created her. In my land, they were called Valkyrie. But she takes a level of fury beyond the Valkyrie. She is something darker, something more violent. She does not just gather the souls of the worthy, she gathers those unworthy, and she gathers them in retribution.
She kind of raises an eyebrow at him and says, "That's nice and all, but are you trying to warn me to stay away from her, or?"
He looks at you and he says, I do not weave the fates. That is not my place. I just inform you that you know, so that you can make the choice without going in blind.
And she nods and she says, "Thank you." And she kind of just, not necessarily walks away, she just kind of starts keeping going on her path.
He kind of watches you go a little ways. And just as you're almost out of sight, he kind of whispers, and you don't recognize the language necessarily, but you kind of get the gist of it, that he's offering some sort of blessing.
She will just nod, and as she walks away, she's just going to take 3 fingers, put them over her heart, and push toward, make a pushing motion back towards the clearing. And then she's gonna head out on her way.
And he, you hear him as he turns, and he just a fairly deep voice, but there's almost a roar to it, almost something animalistic. As he turns and he walks right into the clearing, and he says, just in this deep, throaty voice, Thorson, I am the spirit of the north. I am Stendhal, and I announce myself. I have the blood of the Noyad. I have the magics. I know the runes. I know the spirits. I'm the Warbringer. I announce myself, for my blood traces to those in your court. Though I am not one of you, I am enough. I would not have you send your sheriff that I am forced to kill him, lest he mistake me for one of your kind, wandering lost. I do not come here for conflict, but know that if conflict approaches me, I will not hesitate. And he turns and to the rest of the kindred, and he says, there are many in this city who shape as I do, who restructure the world. Method, means, goals. We are not all the same. Just as you, and he just points to a couple of different vampires and then points towards the prince, are not the same as him. But make no mistake, we are also not the same as those you feed upon. There are those in this city who are disorganized. And he kind of makes a fist and thumps against his chest, and he says, "My kind." Then he points to back towards Miranda and Callie. "Their kind." Then he points to the guy in the robe who had been standing at the edge. "Even his kind. We are not puppets, pawns, tools, or food. You divide up your territories, but know this. The territories you would divide amongst yourselves are already our territories too. You are not sole dominion here. And we will not allow ourselves to scurry about, separated and alone, to be pawns or victims." He looks at the prince. He says, "We could be capable allies. We could respect one another, respect the territory that belongs to many, recognize that our needs do not even overlap. But to do that, one must respect one another as equals." Then he turns. He walks up to where the prince stands with his sword. And he looks down and he says, "I come to your court as a courtesy. Courtesy that was never done to my kind. You come through the cities to speak of humans as food and as if we were all the same. Let us recognize the bigger dangers in this city, lest we tear ourselves to shreds and become an easy meal for them." Then he leans down and places a palm on the stone. And then he picks it up and he kind of traces with a couple fingers. And then he turns and he walks away out of the clearing. And as he does, Gunnar kind of looks after him. And then he looks at everybody still gathered. And he says, "We must discuss and perhaps even vote." And he looks back down at the rock and he says, "The mages have been no friends of ours in the past, but perhaps that is doing them a disservice. And perhaps that was undermining ourselves. I propose that we meet with these mages further, come to some sort of arrangement." And then he kind of gestures down and towards the rock and he says, "Lest we put ourselves in a position we can't remove ourselves from." And
You see the rock. Sorry.
those who are closest can see that the stone has a handprint basically burned into it, as well as a number of runes.
Anything particular?
The runes seem to they're primarily representative of blood, family, and danger.
Okay.
And specifically blood in the center, and then family on one side, danger on the other.
Huh.
Rachel brushes a strand of hair back and continues waiting to talk to the prince.
As everyone else is kind of mingling at that point, then the prince will kind of come over. As you indicated, you're looking to speak.
She gives him a winning grin and says, "Wow, that guy never stops talking, huh?" She pauses and says, "So I remember that you were looking for volunteers to deal with potential masquerade violations."
He says, yeah, that's... He says, unfortunately, he's not wrong either. And he looks down at the stone and he says, a conflict with them could become a violation in and of itself. So perhaps preempting such violations is also part of that wheelhouse. Forming functional relationships with other supernaturals where possible.
She smiles and nods. I'm sure that that's a priority, but current breaches should also be addressed, shouldn't they? I can certainly look to form a closer relationship with the mages if you so ask it of me, but as a newcomer, I think that's not my place. I'm simply here to volunteer to help wherever I can.
Yes, there are some current matters that I've been unfortunately having to shuffle to my seneschal as if he doesn't have enough to do already. So I will have him get a set of missives together for those current breaches that we do have. Our concern is not only address them, get them cleaned up, but also to identify how they occurred and why. Is this kindred who are uneducated? Are these deliberate breaches intended to destabilize us? Are these our enemies who have no regard for the masquerade?
Rachel smiles thinly and looks at him. I have absolutely no regard for the Sabbat, so if I can help in any way, I will. I'm fairly talented at persuading people to help me and investigating, but I will certainly look into these matters if you can get me some briefings.
Yes, I'm sure Victor can put together and organize his notes to pass on to you. I will have that done. Is there a good way to contact you?
She smiles and says that I usually frequent a variety of bars at night, mostly in the southeastern part of town.
He nods and he says, perhaps it might be beneficial for you to speak with Anya as well. Running her nightclub, she may be a good point of contact for you.
Rachel nods. I'll certainly do that. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Nods and says, well, we appreciate your willingness to help. And he turns over to Victor to start and tells him to start getting notes together and stuff. Some of the kindred begin to kind of drift off.
I'll stand and I'll make my way over to Sierra and hand her my card. Tell her that if you need anything, please let me know.
Rachel takes the card politely and smiles and nods. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise.
With that, she's going to make her way out of the clearing and back to the city.
All right.
I'll make my way over to the prince as well and hand him a card and tell him I look forward to hearing from him soon. And explain to him I know my presence here is unnerving to some, but it is what it is.
He kind of chuckles and says, "We have a Giovanni in the city. I don't suspect that you will be much worse."
They're Italian. Outside of their boot and some nice suits, generally they're harmless.
He says, "This one comes from Scotland. And based on the number of unlabeled crates he unloaded when he came in, I don't know if he's harmless. Question is, can I get him to harm the people I want harmed? And what is the cost?"
Most likely, he may have William Wallace tucked away in one of those crates. You never know. It'd make for a great movie.
He kind of chuckles.
Well, I will be around. I don't know where I'm going to set up shop yet. But when I do, I'll let you know. And if ever you need anything, please let me know.
He nods and says, "Certainly."
And with that, I'll drink the contents of the glass that I've been holding and stirring around. And I'll set the glass down. And then Bartholomew will exit the clearing.
All right.
Miranda casts a glance at Avalon about what they were wanting to work on, and so Miranda's going to approach the prince, probably with Avalon close behind her.
Correct.
Buenos dias, Señor Prince. You spoke about wanting to create connections with some of my kind. The Magi of the city?
That seems to be a prudent decision. He kind of gestures to the stone and says, They seem to make it quite clear that they're willing to work with us, but should we fail to do so, it will be a problem.
But I can I can help with the making of the meetings to happen.
Yeah, kind of looks to you and then to Avalon and says, well, considering the fellow who just indicated he's going to be taking charge, there's the blood of vampires, it might make sense. You have a working relationship with a vampire. You're, I imagine, at least somewhat familiar with some of our abilities.
I have a basic understanding.
Yes.
I think that's probably the best situation we can hope for. Quite frankly, the only other option we have would be to send one of our sorcerers, and they don't operate on the same level.
I also wanted to is something for me personally. I wanted to how's this? How you say to make the trees around here stronger and more vibrant. Is that the word, Miha? More alive.
Yes, she wants to help your woodlands and your trees.
Well, it never hurts to have the preserve flourish. There's certainly opportunities for you to come and visit. I do not know if you personally extend yourself into the spirit realms, but be aware that this territory is claimed by a spirit as well.
Oh, see, I will have a conversation with them to make sure that we are working on the same. On the what's the word? We are on the same page.
Yep, that's correct.
See, working on the same
Guys,
page.
what type of spirit? So we may perhaps make an offering of sorts.
He chuckles and says, well, the only one whose home I would live in. Spirit of the night.
Fear of the night. What was it? See, we can have a dealings with this spirit and make sure that things go well. See,
Yes.
Well, I think at this point I'll leave it to you two to handle your your project with the trees and set up those meetings.
gracias, señor.
He nods
Buenos
and
Well
noches.
says
done.
your assistance is appreciated.
And Miranda will slip her arms back around Avalon, either her waist or her arm, or however she wants to hold her.
Okay. Have a good the rest of your evening. She will nod to the prince and she will look to Miranda and half smirk. Well, I believe we have some things to take care of. Let's go home.
Hey,
She kind of winks
mija.
at her. And she will start moving to leave.
Alright, so I believe that's everybody then. So I am going to go ahead and call that scene unless there's something someone else wants to take care of.
I'm good.
Alright.
I'm good.
Well then, thank you players for playing and watchers for watching. This has been another Nightfall in Amsterdam. In this case, the Vampire Court. Look forward to seeing you another night. Join us again soon.